Okay, welcome back to our virtual Dirshu Mishnah Berurah share. We're continuing to learn Mishnah Berurah Chelik Hey, where we're going to be doing in this share primarily Kuf Lamed Gimel Amid Aleph. I'm just going to finish off Kuf Lamed Beis Amid Beis. This share is going to be titled Part 2. If you remember, I had just explained the beginning of Mishnah Berurah Eis Katan Yud Ches. Now I'm going to read Mishnah Berurah Eis Katan Yud Ches inside in its entirety, and then we're going to continue weiter. So says the Mishnah Berurah, V'yich ben maher. This is going on the case of the Ramah, where you had an oil lamp that had one wick in it. You want the oil lamp to go out sooner, so you added wicks to the lamp so that you should have more flames burning. It will consume the oil faster. Said the Chavetz Chaim, Ayin beBirur Halacha. He sent you to the Birur Halacha Divrei Maschil v'Yechabe. The Mechaven sheyich be'oira. If you're adding the new wicks with the express intent so that the flame should go out sooner, lav lekulei almahu. Then not everybody would agree to what the Ramah says here. The Ramah says here that adding these new wicks with the express intent to consume the oil faster and make the flame go out sooner is mutter. Says the Mishnah Berurah here and in the Birur Halacha, not everybody would agree with that. That's only true if you go strictly with Tosfos. However, if you go with the rush, that by depriving a flame of its fuel source and making it go out earlier, you're performing the malacha of kibui, then if you do this with the express intent that the fire should go out sooner, so what you did is you did kibui on the original flame. But this is the diuk that I made in the Mishnah Berurah, and it's based on the Birur Halacha and it's based on an Aruch HaShulchan. If, however, you did not have the intent to make the flame go out earlier, you added 5 wicks to the lamp because you wanted more light in your sukkah, then it would seem that the Chavetz Chaim is telling you even the rush would hold that is mutter, because what you're doing is havara. You needed another 5 flames, and you did this to make 5 new flames. You didn't do it in order to consume your fuel faster. That's not why you did it at all. You did it because you needed more fire. And kivui and havara are a stira. You can't tell me that when I did havara, I was doing kivui. Therefore, says the Chavetz Chaim, continuing on Yud Ches, Ve'enai elarak l'das hayesh matirin l'kamon b'sif gimel. This that the Ramah says that to add the wicks with the express intent of making the fire go out sooner is mutter. That's only according to the Ramah and Siv Gimel. The V'yesh matirin, where the Ramah goes strictly with Tosfos, that's who would hold that this is mutter. And according to what the Chavetz Chaim says he's going to write later on in the Mishnah Berurah, that we are, to a certain extent, we're machmir like the Rush, who adin kan, we would be machmir here as well, and we would say it is not mutter to add wicks to the lamp in order to consume the oil faster and make the fire go out sooner. Now continues the Chavetz Chaim with a side point. Also, lechamem ner shel shava. Very interesting. You're not allowed to heat up a candle and melt it somewhat, make it soft, or ledapkoi b'kaisel oy b'menorah, so that you can then stick it to the wall or stick it to the lamp. Why can't you do this? Gezerah shema yimareach. It's a gezerah because you might come to perform the malacha of meruach. You might go shmear and smooth out the wax. You might, it's the malacha memachik. You might come to smear the wax on the wall or on the lamp. That's a total of the Isser of memachik. Okay, now we go to Siv Gimel and what continues to be a very complicated Siman. Says the Mechaber. Ner shel shava sheroitza lahadlikoi b'yontiv. You want to light a candle on Yom Tov. You have a candle, and you need some light in one of the rooms, so you want to light a candle. And, of course, right away, if you want to light a candle, remember, you have to light it from a pre-existing flame. You're not allowed to create a new flame on Yom Tov. You're never allowed to do that. So if you want to light the candle, but you have a Yartzeit Licht that's burning, so you want to light a new candle from the Yartzeit Licht. But you have a problem. The candle is a very big candle. It's a 4-hour candle. And you don't need a 4-hour candle. The chasalav shelo yisarif kulai. You don't want the entire candle to burn. Says the Mechaber, I'll give you an eitzah. Yachal litain svivai kaidim sheyad likenu. Before you light the candle, you could put something around half of the candle, davar haminei amili saref, something that will prevent it from burning, be'inyan sheyichbek yishiyagir sham, so that the fire will go out when it reaches that point. For example, take the candle and stick it into loose sand. So if you bury half the candle in loose sand, what will happen is the candle will burn down. When it gets under the level of the sand will cave in, it will cover up the candle, and it'll go out. So says the Mechaber, if you want to do this before you light the candle, you're allowed to do it. Says the Mishnah Berurah, is cutting your test. Litain sviva. So first the Mechaber points out, why isn't there a much simpler eitzah? Why don't you just cut the candle in half? What do you have to give me such funny eitzahs? Cut the candle in half. It was a 4-hour candle, now it's a 2-hour candle. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the lechatchai b'sakin aser, to cut the candle with a knife is certainly aser. The mashachaytcha l'shtayim, because when you cut it into 2 pieces, va'isa l'chalachas ner b'fnei atzmai, and now you make 2 candles out of one, hu b'chlal tikun maneh, that's the isser of tikun maneh, makah b'patish, you made a candle. Or lechatcha al yidei ur kaidam adlaka, how about if you want to burn it in half? You'll take a fire, you'll melt your way through the wax, burn the wick so that the wick gets cut, and basically you're cutting it with fire. We said we're going to say later in Sifches that to burn a candle in half is mutter. Ain't a roitza. He doesn't want to do that. Why doesn't he want to do that? Very simple why he doesn't want to do that. Why is this person doing this? He's not doing it only because he only wants a 2-hour candle. He wants 2 2-hour candles. He doesn't want to burn a 4-hour candle now. He wants to have another candle that he could burn later. He wants to have a candle he could burn tomorrow. So what's he going to do? Burn the candle in half? That's not going to help him. He wants the other half of the candle so that he could burn it tomorrow. Or if you burn the candle in half, so both halves are going to be lit by the fire that you used to cut it. He's not going to be left with anything. So that's not an eitzah. So what did the Mishnah Berurah tell you here? Nice cutting your test. He said, why is the Mechaber giving you this eitzah to stick, let's say, the candle in sand? Because you have a problem. You can't cut the candle. That would be the malach of tikkun maneh. You can't burn it in half. Then both halves are going to be lit, and you're not going to have anything for tomorrow. So neither one of those eitzahs are good. So what does the Mechaber say? Stick it in something that's going to prevent the candle from burning down past a certain point. Now, ois kat l'chaf. The Mechaber said, when are you allowed to do this? Koydem sheyad likenu. You're only allowed to do this before you light the candle. Even though earlier in Ilchas Shabbos and Shin Lamed Aleph Sivchav Beis we said the gram kibui shari, that causing something to become extinguished is mutter. So what's the problem? Why is the Mechaber telling me that I have to stick the candle into the sand before I light it? Why can't I stick it in even after it's lit? So what's the problem? The fire is going to go out when it goes down below the level of the sand? So what? That's gram kibui. Why isn't that like the case that I told you about earlier, where you have the fire traveling and you put the earthenware barrels in front of it, and when the fire hits it, the barrels will bust and the fire will go out? Same thing over here. I stuck the candle in the sand. When the fire goes down past a certain point, the sand will cave in and it'll put the fire out. Why aren't those the same? Explains to Mishnah Berurah that there's a chiluk. Hainu sham. Gram kibui is mutter over there in Shin Lamed Daled by the earthenware buckets. She'ena negeya badavar adoylek ayin sham. Because over there, you're not messing with the fuel of the fire at all. All I'm touching are barrels of water. All I'm moving are barrels of water. I'm not doing anything to the fire. I'm not doing anything to the fuel of the fire. All of that is going to happen by itself. That's all happening memela. I'm handling barrels of water. That's all I'm handling. Avokan, but in our case, where you're sticking the candle into sand, noigeya b'shava, you're handling the wax, you're handling the candle, shemuchenes kula lahadlaka, that was completely prepared to be burned. And therefore it doesn't matter if you cut the candle and shorten it, or you do something like burying it in sand so that the fire will go out when it reaches a certain point. Also, it's also Zeus Faras HaMechaber. That's the sheet of the Mechaber. Oh, why is it the sheet of the Mechaber? Because the Mechaber paskins like the Rosh. The Mechaber holds that anything that you do that deprives the flame of its fuel. So what are you doing over here? You lit a 4-hour candle. So all 4 hours worth of wax are dedicated to that flame. Now you're taking half the candle, so you're taking half of the fuel, and you're burying it in sand. By doing that, you're doing the malacha to deprive the flame of its fuel. That's kibui. That's not gram kibui, because you're doing it to the fire itself. You're doing it to the fuel. It's not like the earthenware barrels of water. Over there, you're moving barrels of water. You're not doing anything to the fuel. But over here, you are. Aval, however, says the Chavetz Chaim, Kama Achroinim, the Bach, the Tiferes Shmuel, the Taz, the Magen Avraham, the Gra, the El Yerabah. Aval Kama Achroinim Chalkam al Zeh. Many Achroinim argue on this mechaber. With Svira Lahu, and they hold you're allowed to do this even after you lit the candle. They hold you're allowed to do this. Well, even according to the Rosh, what are you doing? Let's look at the distinction that the Rosh made. The Rosh said if you put earthenware barrels in front of a fire, that's gram kibui. I didn't do anything to the fire. I didn't do anything to the fuel. That's gram kibui. How about if I take a teaspoon of oil out of a burning lamp? That, the Rosh holds, is not gram kibui. That's usher. That's kibui. Why? Because I took the fuel out of the fire. But this case over here is a middle ground. This case over here, I didn't cut half of the candle off. I didn't remove the fuel from the fire. The fuel is still there. And I didn't do anything to the fuel. I put sand around it. You could even say that this case that we're discussing over here, what was the case of the Mechaber? The Mechaber said, I surrounded it. I put something svivav. I put something around it. So I didn't do anything to the fuel. I didn't remove the fuel. I didn't ruin the fuel. I put something around it. So many Achronim say that would be mutter even according to the Rosh. Even the Rosh would agree that that's only gram kibui and not kibui. Okay, that was Eis Katan Chaf. Eis Katan Chaf Aleph. The Mechaber said, put something around the candle that will prevent it from burning beyond a certain point. Davar ha'meinei milisarif. Kagoin, for example, she'itein sviv ha'choil, build up loose sand around half the candle. And when it burns down to a certain point, the sand will collapse over the candle and go out. Ukai gavna. And similarly, you don't have to build up the sand around it. You can take the candle and stick it into loose sand. So that there's no malacha of forming a hole in the ground. You see, you can't take the candle and stick it into thick earth, because then you're making a hole. Making a hole could be baineh, it could be chayrish. But if it's loose sand, so that if you pull the candle out, the hole would collapse in on itself, then there's no malacha of asiyas guma. So that when it burns down below the level of the sand, it'll go out. According to what I just explained in the name of many achronim, that you're allowed to do this even after you light the candle. He says that these achronim would agree that even taking the candle and sticking it into the loose sand is also not called doing a maisa with the fuel. This is also gram kibui according to the Rosh. However, the Mishnah Berurah says what you cannot do is you can't put the candle into like a spring-loaded tongs, so that after it burns past a certain point, the tongs will shut on it and put it out. Or to stick the candle onto a wall, so that when the flame goes to a certain point, it'll melt the wax, it'll fall off, and it'll go out. That's called, it's as if you cut half the fuel off. Why? I guess, I don't know. Somehow by putting it into the tzvengel, by putting it into the tongues, somehow maybe that's more doing something to the candle than sticking it into the sand. I'm not 100% sure why this is so. Let me see if I could just find something, quickly. Sometimes you prepare to say the shir, and you think you have a good way of explaining something, but then when it gets down to it, you're like, why 100%? Not sure. It sounds like somehow it's a more direct deprivation of the fuel. Trying to picture it in my mind. In one case, you're taking the candle and you're sticking it into loose sand. When the fire burns down to a certain point, the sand will collapse. Okay, so over there, you didn't do anything to the candle. I'm not doing something to the candle that will make half of the candle not burn. I'm surrounding it with sand, or I'm putting it into sand, and the sand is going to put it out. Maybe the tongues, by putting it into the tongues, I don't know. I'm not clear. I'm having a hard time putting my finger on the chiluk over here. I'll think about it. Okay. All of the Achrayim would agree that according to the Machaber, this is Aser. Because you're doing something to the fuel itself in order to make it go out faster. That is kivuy according to the Machaber, who paskins like the Rush. Could we go a little bit further? Let's go a little bit further. Haggah, says the Rama. There are those that are matir, cutting the candle in half using a fire. Again, not with a knife, that would be tikkun maneh. What does this mean, to burn it? He means to light both sides so that it will burn down quicker. It will melt. But to do this with a knife would be aser. Says the Mishnah Roy's Cotton Chav Beis. This is true even after you went ahead and you lit it. The time and the reason is that here we have the Mishnah Berurah spells it out. Why does the Ramah tell you that there are those that are matir this? Because this is Taisvis. Taisvis holds that doing something to deprive the fuel from the fire is only gram kivui. That's mutter. So why is it also to take a spoonful of oil out of a lamp? Because you're making the fire dim. But over here, if you have a candle and you want to burn off half of the candle, you didn't make the fire dim. You removed half the fuel. According to Taisvis, that's not a problem. I'm not doing anything to dim it. Just it'll go out sooner. And Taisus holds that's gram kivui, not kivui, v'shari, and it's mutter. The Ramah says v'chein noyagin, that this is the way we're noyag. Says the Mishnah Berurah Chav Gimel v'chein noyagin. However, v'kama achreinim kasu d'nachal hachmer keder yishayne sha'isa b'zeh. However, the Mishnah Berurah brings down in the name of many Achrayim, Da'al Shabbos, El Yerabba, Marshal, Yamshel Shloima, that we should be chayshish for the shita of the Rush, and therefore this would be aser because you're depriving the flame of its fuel, and that is kibui. Is cut and chavdalid in any way to cut the candle with a knife is aser. Because you're doing tikkun maneh, v'chal tikkun maneh. you're making another candle, even though that certainly was not your intent. Okay, so Baruch Hashem, we got to cover Daf Kuf Lamed Beis Amud Beis and Daf Kuf Lamed Gimel Lamed Aleph. It's wonderful to be back learning with everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. The source of Limud HaTorah should stand God's Klal Yisrael in good stead. Berurah should send Yeshua's, Refuahs, and Parnasa, and all good things to everyone. Be well.